This will be my backpacking gear list from Gates of the Arctic. I just got back yesterday afternoon, spent 8 days up there on a guided trip with Andrew Skurka Adventures. Was actually on that trip with Andrew, and that was kind of neat because I read his book back in 2018 and adopted many of his suggestions from that book. So it was cool to actually go out into the field with him and backpack with him. And there was another guide there, Brandon Chase, who was also very knowledgeable. And so in this video, I'm going to walk you through all the gear that I used out there and talk about what worked well and what didn't. Got my computer up here where I'm able to watch. If you drop a chat in there or whatever chat message, I will answer it. If you can't hear me at all, let me know in the chat. I'm seeing the little green line there that it looks like you can probably hear me. I've got my computer over here now with my webcam, which it's using that webcam. But anyways, let's get into it. I'm going to start with two of the big three here, and then I'm going to get into the pack and kind of take things out and talk about what worked and didn't. My sleep system's kind of buried in the bottom, so we'll get to that kind of towards the end. So my pack here, it's a Z-Packs Arcall Zip. You can kind of see this is actually how it would have looked when I was out there in the field. The only thing that is different is that I was actually using one of these trekking poles. I was carrying one, and I don't actually normally use trekking poles, but because of the suggestions of Andrew and the guides crew, basically I felt it was something that I should respect their opinion on, and it definitely helped out having trekking poles with the tussocks and all the uneven ground. So basically, I had one of these poles out all the time and using that to walk along. So otherwise, the pack, I would say it actually was very, very comfortable. Okay, I see Jeff heading out to West Virginia with Skurka in September. That's awesome, man. You're going to love that trip. So the pack was very comfortable. I've used this pack now for about a year and a half and fits everything that I need. And I actually have two of the add-on side pockets, which are really handy for keeping things that I need often. Like for instance, I had my solar panel right there on the side, and when we would stop, I would pop that out and use it. And then on the other side, I kept my rain jacket. Some of the other things that I've done in terms of add-ons is the belt pockets, and in there I kept basically my sun gloves. I also have this head thingy that keeps my ears warm, so I don't want to have my head get hot, but keep my ears warm. And then my buff in there and my head net, so things that I needed frequently or things that I would be taking on and off. And then in the other side, I had basically snacks, and then my rain mitts. These are REI Gore-Tex rain mitts, so those all fit really well in there. And then I also have this pocket thing holder, shoulder strap holder, and on this side I kept the bear spray, which they did provide. Another thing that they had on their bear spray was this long line, which was helpful or is helpful for not losing it. There's definitely times where you're walking through stuff where if you were bending over or something could kind of loop on and grab onto it, it could fall out and you may not notice it for a long time. Andrew mentioned that during the first year out there, that actually happened. 2 out of the people that were in that group actually lost theirs. On the other side, I have another Z-Packs shoulder strap thing, and that's good for keeping the phone in there, but I actually didn't really use it that often for my phone, except for when we were crossing rivers. I would put that in there. Just used it as another place to stow things. Sometimes I would just put the things that I was using a lot in there. One thing I do keep in there all the time now is actually this Govee smart thermometer Bluetooth thingy, and it's kind of cool. There's an app that syncs to your phone via Bluetooth, and you get all this data. Of course, you can have a thermometer and see an active current temperature if you have a thermometer or a digital sensor, but it's cool. They'll be like, okay, last night, what was the low? I'm not going to wake up at 4 in the morning to figure out what that was. So I can open the app and then see all that historical data throughout the entire trip. I do keep it inside that little baggie because it isn't waterproof. This pack or this pocket is technically waterproof, but water resistant, but I still keep that in there. I also keep in here like lip balm. On the other side, I have just a pack towel. Didn't need that often, but I did have it. Another thing is like an emergency whistle and a compass. Now this wasn't really useful. It's got a thermometer on there. And as part of the guided trip with Andrew, one of the things that they do is they actually teach you how to use a compass properly, which is really cool. I never actually had done that before. So we learned how to take bearings and different things like that. And as part of the trip, I actually, oops, something fell over here. What was that? Actually went to REI this morning and bought one of the compasses. So if you see in the thumbnail or whatever, there's a compass. This is actually it. It's a Sunto. I'm a CalTopo person, and I rely on that pretty heavily. But now that after learning how to properly use a compass and navigate with that, I'm going to carry it with me, and I'm going to try to do that when I'm out, just to go old school, I guess. So I have a compass now that I actually kept in this front pocket that we would use when we were navigating. Okay, what do I not like about this pack? The one thing that I haven't really encountered so much with a lot of my other backpacking adventures in California is rain. And I definitely had issues with water getting into the pack. I noticed one day when we were stopped at the end of the day, there was water that had collected in the bottom of here. So 2 days, actually, the end of the day, it rained all day. There was water in the bottom. I suspect it either was getting through the zipper not fully closed or just the amount of zippers on here. One thing that I'm going to adjust for moving forward is I have bought another thing over here, is basically trash compactor bags that I'm going to use as a liner with this pack, and that will ensure that none of my stuff gets wet. I do have everything in here pretty much inside of dry bags, but also those can fail and stuff. Another thing that I just found right here that I also kept in my outer pack pocket when we were landing and taking off in the bush plane or just flying in the bush plane, earplugs, and just little foam ones. They're Max Ultra Soft, and I also use these at night because there can be wind or rain hitting the tent, and that can be loud and annoying. Another thing I keep on the outside of my pack is my Garmin InReach. I had that in tracking mode all the time so that people who are following me home could follow me and see where I'm at. Funny thing was, my mom was tracking me and she's like, "Hey, yeah, it looks like you're at a dead end." And she, it's actually not a dead end. We're going up over that mountain pass that looks like it's not really hikeable. So it's fun to, create that constant bread trail that people can follow and watch. Another thing that I kept on the outside of my pack was I had socks. They suggested not bringing extra socks because your feet would be wet the entire time in Gates of the Arctic, and that was definitely true. Literally, as soon as we got off the plane, our feet were wet, but I still brought extra socks because, I don't know, I'm a feet care person. I like to have dry feet, so I would actually put on some slightly slightly less wet socks, while my other socks would be on the outside of my pack, getting dry. And in terms of my socks, I have the Njiji toe socks and then the Darn Tough Light Hikers, and that really is what I've been using for a long time, and they worked well. Other things on the outside of my pack was my Nalgene that I use for making coffee. All right, so I'm just going to move into other big 3-item here was my tent. Z-Packs Duplex. I've had this for probably now 7 years, and I've used it for I don't know how many 200 nights over that time, and I don't necessarily use it a lot these days. I actually use a sling fin Portal 2 because I'm not really carrying poles anymore, and carrying all this stuff is not as ideal. But it worked okay for keeping me protected. Definitely didn't have any issues with water intrusion or getting wet inside the tent. I pretty much kept the doors open whenever I could, and oh, we didn't take the portals. Okay, yeah, because they specifically, Jeff asking why I didn't use the portal was because I was encouraged to bring trekking poles, and I was thinking to myself, well, total weight here of the portal, and then using one pole. I don't know. They also definitely encourage Andrew Skurka Adventures definitely encourages people to use trekking pole style tents. I think maybe they would have harassed me at the gear check-in if I had that. I actually have my portal too for the rest of the trip where I'm out at all these other national parks. I'm not going to be using this, and because I find that I like to take the fly off and have more ventilation or more 360-degree views. Also, another thing that I was reminded of as part of being out there with a lot of wind is that this makes a lot of noise in the wind, even when you pitch it perfectly taut and have it all set up properly. There would just be this wind noise, and it would almost be like this resonating, like sometimes with the wind hitting it, and I would get out and adjust it and couldn't eliminate that. So that was another helpful thing, was to have these earplugs, because this thing is loud, and even when it was raining, it just over accentuates the sound of what is like a sprinkler. You're like, man, it's really raining out there, but it's not. Stick your head out and you barely feel it. Well, when it's hitting the Dyneema fabric, it just is like hitting a drum. So, yeah, so okay, tent for this trip, but definitely was thinking about how I would have rather had the portal when I was out there. So let's get into the interior of the pack, and I'm just gonna pull things out as I see them in there. This I kept near the top. This was my puffy. Kept it in a dry bag. It's an REI down jacket that I've had for a number of years. I also have a goose feet gear down jacket, anorak style, that I don't really like so much as this, with the full zip and having pockets on both sides. And this definitely kept me warm when I wore it. I would throw that on at camp, or sometimes when we would stop. Okay, cook system right here. This is full. I just put it in there for visualization. I did use a canister stove. I also got alcohol stoves, but I prefer the speed of this because I'm doing things like make coffee, and I think I would have used more liquid fuel if I was using the alcohol stove. So being able to just kind of put filtered water in here and heat it up to the point of making it warm enough for coffee, as opposed to boiling it and not needing to worry about measuring and dealing with fuel. My stove itself is my cook system. This is a Vault can TI pot. I like this one because it's a 900 or so, just under a full liter, and it's got the bail on there, which is helpful for if you actually fill it up with water in the creek and then bring that back, or to lift it on and off. My cooking stove is the Pocket Rocket Deluxe, and I've actually got a little windscreen with that from Flat Cat Gear that I think improves my fuel efficiency, because I was doing things like making coffee every day, at least once per day, and then doing tea at night, and I still had fuel left where other people were running out. And I was also only turning the stove up to as minimal amount. I also use one of these, which goes on the bottom of the fuel canister, and it is really handy for all of those uneven ground situations that you find yourself in. If you're boiling water and you lose all your hot water after it's just about ready, then you're going to be regretting it, or you're going to spill your food. So that just is helpful. It's not very heavy. And then I have a little scrubby in there. Solar panel, I kept this on the side, but basically Suntastics, and I kept my phone cable right there. Not too heavy. It was helpful for the first few days, keeping my phone above, keeping it topped off. One of the things that Andrew provides as part of um, the gear that they provide. I mean, they don't provide a lot of gear, but one of the things that checked in was bread bags. So basically, when you get to camp and you take off your wet hiking socks, put on these dry bags or bread bags over your feet, and then your sleep socks inside there, and your wet shoes won't penetrate that, and you keep your socks dry. I did use a 2-liter Hydro Pack seeker, and I had this that I added to it, which was really helpful because there were times where we had to do a water carry, and I was able to be hands-free with that, so that was helpful as opposed to just this little tiny strap on there. And I have a Be Free on there so that I have basically a backup. Andrew and Brandon provided Aquamira, but I don't want to be dependent on someone else for my water needs, so I wanted to have my own filter. So I had regular Be Free that I would use to just drink during the day, and then this would be for water carries or at camp. So I kept this Be Free in the outer side pocket there. Okay, another thing that I tried out for the first time on this trip was actually a backcountry bidet with a smart water bottle. I think this is the backcountry bidet brand. No, it's Kulo Clean. And I did not bring any toilet paper at all. Didn't use any TP for 8 days. And this was, I think I'm totally a convert now of using a backcountry bidet, and felt a lot cleaner, and also didn't have to deal with toilet paper in the wind or in the rain. I had to go number 2 at least 3 times where it was raining and it was windy, and doing all that with toilet paper and having to pack all that out would have just been a huge drag. So that is what I'll be using from now on. Part of my other rain gear was a Z-Packs rain kilt. I think this is the large one. They also have a smaller one, and this was good. I'm not a rain pants person because that just makes me too hot. So I would use this rain kilt anytime when it was raining enough to need it. And I also used it as just a general ground sheet, which Andrew had basically a trash compactor bag that he used as a ground sheet. And then I used this folded out, which provided me a lot of space to sit on. I could basically sit on there and have my feet stretched out and stay dry. Literally everywhere in Gates of the Arctic is wet. So definitely bring something to sit on to keep your butt dry. And if you want to stretch out, bring something like that or a compactor bag. Little can koozie that fits perfectly on this Nalgene, keeps my coffee or tea warmer longer, and also when I'm holding it doesn't hurt my hands. I also would heat up water and sometimes would just have that down in my kind of warming up my legs inside my quilt. I have never used an earth sack, but this is what we used up there, and so that was nice to not need to carry a bear canister. It's lighter, kind of fits in the pack a little bit easier, and when you take more stuff out of it, it is smaller. Pretty straightforward. Also an op sack that was inside there. This helps to reduce the smell, as well as if it was raining, then that would probably seep through the earth sack. I had 8 days worth of food in here, and I literally ate through almost everything except a tiny handful of things. Have a long handled TI spoon that I kept in there. And then I also had 1 gallon Ziploc bags that nested all in there that held all my trash. I brought a little pack towel because I was thinking maybe there might be an opportunity to go into a lake and swim and just rinse off. We did see we landed on a lake, small, it was more like a pond, and then we saw another decent sized pond, and the water was so cold and there wasn't really a time to do that, and it might have been raining. So I used this once to wipe down the tent with condensation, and then another time after we had forded a river that took 45 minutes to cross, to just dry off my feet because they were super cold at the end of that. I carry Leather gloves. I think these are sheepskin. They're Ace brand, and that's handy for sticking in tent stakes at camp, or if you're ever scrambling and you need to put your hands down on granite or sharp stuff to keep your hands from getting nicked up. This is the Thermarest X Therm NXT, the large version. Worked perfect out there. I like the wing lock because it fills faster and deflates faster. I didn't actually. One of the funny things was we talked, a bunch of us, like, you don't really need a sleeping pad in Gates of the Arctic because the tundra is so spongy and soft that it's like a memory foam mattress. But you would sink in your knees or wherever, anywhere you put your feet down or your body parts on there, and so you need something to keep yourself elevated. And eventually, I think you would just get cold from the water, the wet ground touching your body. Okay, another thing that I used when I was out there was Dirty Girl gaiters. This I didn't need when I was wearing pants, and so I alternated between shorts and pants depending upon the temperature outside. I have two dry bags down here in the bottom. One contains my quilt. This is an Enlightened Equipment Revelation. It's a 20 degree. It's about 7 years old now, based upon the fill weights of what they sell today on their website. I think this is more like a 30 to a 35. For the first 2 nights or 3 nights even, I did not wear my puffy when I slept because I was warm enough just with my upper body that I didn't feel the need. And then as the trip went on, I did wear my puffy at night. And I also had sleep clothes that I wore. I didn't have any issues with this, and I kept it zipped and cinched at the bottom the whole time. The actual dry bag itself, I had bought two brand new Hyperlight Mountain size ones like this, and on the strip, noticed that one of those already got a hole in around the tape. So I'm going to be trying to figure out if I can do a warranty claim on that or something, because it shouldn't do that. I definitely wasn't abusing it. So after noticing that, I swapped that one out that was holding my quilt for the other one that was holding my sleep clothes. So let's see here. See that right? Maybe not, but there is a small hole right there, which shouldn't happen with a new bag like this. Same sized one. In here, my sleep clothes, I had a Smart Wool shirt, some Smart Wool long socks. I had long underwear, and then my upper body. I feel like I get colder faster if I'm not wearing something to keep my head and neck and ears warm. So I have a balaclava, Smart wool, and then a buff, and then just a knit hat over that. Two things I did not wear that I brought that I thought I might need was a bucket hat, and I wore this hat with a sun hoodie, and that was perfect. And this would have been probably not effective with the amount of wind in a lot of places, and because of the way that there was clouds or the sun was low in the sky, I didn't feel the need for that. I also brought a pair of regular underwear because I hike with 3/4 inch length kind of dry fit fabric things, and I really like to wear these because when I'm wearing shorts, the bottoms of the exposed skin gets colder faster, especially if it's windy, and I don't need to wear suntan lotion on my lower legs. I was wearing these Smartwell shorts, and only on 2 days did I wear pants. I was wearing Prana Zions. These are my go-to. These are actually the only pants I ever wear when I wear pants. I could actually roll them up, which I did a few times. And my shirt, all of those things were treated with permethrin at home. And then my hiking shirt is a Vormy. I love these hiking shirts. The sun hoodie, this is the River Run hoodie. I've got a bunch of them in the different colors. So I bought this one brand new for this trip, and it has buttons in the front there to adjust it, and you can vent more or not. And I sent this one to Insect Shield for the insect shield treatment, and I did not get a single bug bite on my upper body. Only got a few bug bites on my hands that were exposed at times, or like when I was going to the bathroom on my lower body that was exposed. Had the second pair of socks, and then my Lone Peak 8s. These were brand new for this season, but I definitely broke them in before this trip, and they worked out fine. Yeah, so let's see what else I got here. That's all of the stuff. Oop, and my pillow. This is the large size Sea to Summit. I like the larger size because I can then roll around a little bit and not fall off of it. Another thing that I wore was my Julbo glacier glasses. They're the 95% sunlight blocking kind with then the little clips on the side. And those were perfect for me. I wore them a lot. I guess one thing that I don't like is that when I put them up on my brim here, they do seem to fall off when I lean over. And I've gotten so good at feeling that feeling that when they're falling off, I can just like catch them in thin air or out of the air when that happens. In terms of camera setup or electronics, I have a Samsung Galaxy S23 Plus in a rubber case, and that worked perfect for taking photos and video. I like that there's 3 lenses, and I didn't have my stabilizer that I've been using a lot on this trip because I didn't want to deal with getting that out. But it does really good photos, I think, and also video. I did bring the Insta360 X4 and it's still wet here on the face, and I should dry that off. And also an extendable selfie stick. This is the very, very long one. So this is 3 meters. It looks kind of silly when you're using it. Andrew took photos of me, and they joked about it like, whatever, I don't care how it looks when I'm using it. It gets the results that I want. And because of the position of where it was there in the pack, without any difficulty at all, I could extend it up and have it pointed up or coming out of my pack and get that kind of bird's eye view of certain places. I didn't do that a lot, but certain cool places, like when we were approaching a waterfall, when we were going up over the highest mountain pass during the trip, and during the water crossing. And then I did use it a couple of times at camp or just different scenic viewpoints to take 360 photos. And it really does a good job of taking 360 photos and getting a really wide angle. It's 360 degrees, and then you can adjust and pick exactly where you want by reframing it in the app, either on your phone by syncing it out in the field, which just uses more battery, but I did that eventually once I knew I had enough battery, or you can do it on your desktop computer at home. I also carried a carbon fiber. This is the Oben carbon fiber. I don't particularly care for the smaller smaller like tripods that have like that adjustable hand grip because I fear that they'll fail. And I could also use this to hold. I have the Arca plate on there, and this I could extend to. Basically, you get the idea. I could put this on there and get it to the full distance. Put a rock on here, and it's not going to tip over. So you get a lot of stability by having these all the way out, and it's not that difficult to get that out. So I have the Arca plate permanently attached to the bottom of this guy, and then I also have another phone clip that goes on to there. So the Arca plate for this metallized Ulanzi deal for holding my phone. And I often want to be able to take specific shots. It was a nice thing to have other people out there with me on this guided trip. There were 6 other participants and 2 guides, so 8 people total. So I could ask other people to take a photo for me, and no knock against anybody else, but sometimes people don't get the right framed up shot that I would have wanted. And so I like to be able to put my smartphone onto the tripod and then line up exactly what I want, and then use the timer function in the app or in the camera app to get exactly the shot I want. And then also when I'm in the tent, not on this particular trip, but there's definitely trips where I want to be able to like watch a movie. And so I'll use the tripod to hold my phone up and get it in the right spot so I can be like laying there and watching a movie. Other things that I used to charge up my stuff was this Anker 2700 milliamp, and I still have one bar left on there. I definitely conserved all my stuff and kept my things charged, as well as with using the solar panel to charge my small electronics, which was handy. And then I had my contingent of different cables. I have the little wind muff here things that go on the Insta360 that keep the wind noise down. I know I talked about not liking these types of tripods, but I actually brought one because I thought there might be a scenario where I'm using both tripods at the same time. So I have a little small thing here, basically camera clip, and then that guy, this weighs almost nothing, so this was just whatever, dead weight, but it's not a lot. I had two USB-C cables in case I needed those. I brought earbuds because I don't want to be a jerk and be playing music loud where there's people next to me and they're hearing my music. I also brought a little microphone. I know it's like a cheap one from Amazon with a dead cat on there that goes onto my smartphone in the USB-C plug. And using that, I could be standing and taking video and not have a lot of wind noise. It was really windy pretty much everywhere all the time. So that came in handy when I wanted it and used it. I'm just gonna see here what's going on. Okay. This was something to hold the, okay, it had some extra batteries for the Insta360. So I didn't need to dip into my charger, my battery bank. And I basically used these up. Then I started to charge just a single battery off of the battery bank. That worked out fine. Here's the FlexTail Mini. I also have the bigger one, the FlexTail Pump 2. It's got a light on it, which isn't really necessary. So I wanted something small, and this just saved some weight. I felt bad because I'm the type of person where it's like everybody on the guided trip went to bed and I'm out rustling, I'm out taking photos, even sometimes past 11. And then I get into my tent and I'm rustling around and I haven't really blown up my AirPad yet. So I would be like, in the tent making noise. I had extra earplugs in case I wanted or needed them. I also had a few extra mini SD cards for the Insta360. If I had actually used the amount of footage that would be required to fill up a 256 gig on this, I would have been probably consuming far too much battery life. So I didn't actually use those or need them. And then I have my sleep mask. Felt silly, using this in the past. I made a video a year ago where I used this in the winter time and it actually kept my face warm. Well, on this trip, this was absolutely necessary. There was 24 hours of sunlight all the time. The sun does not set in the gates of the Arctic until July 18th. So it's bright out all the time, which definitely is kind of nice because I could be doing things outside of the tent. But then I needed this of course, to go to sleep. And on this trip that I've been on for 2 months now, I have been fully adjusted to the time the time difference as well as the amount of light out here. So I have another little sleep mask here in my van, so I have no problem using that, and I keep all that stuff in a hyperlight bag. And another thing that I keep in there is a little trail journal. On this 2-month trip in all these national parks, I've been doing a journal, which I've never done in my life until this trip, but I don't want to forget things. So I bought this little Writes in the Rain all-weather universal. It's like waterproof pages, and then I have an astronaut pen that I keep clipped to that. And then sometimes I would use this when we were doing things outside of out. We were using maps to navigate. Where is it? Can't find it now. Okay, yeah. So this was another thing I kept on the outside of my pack. But I filled up this whole journal with all of the every day I would write in there what was going on, and then keeping that clipped together. But sometime during the day, I would keep the astronaut pen on the outside. Andrew Skurka Adventures, they teach you how to read maps. I feel like I was pretty good until this trip, and definitely now I'm way more proficient. They print off all of the topos. These are the USGS topos, and I would keep the little astronaut pen out because we were kind of asked, mark where you're at, draw a line to where you think we're at, and inside that bag, I would roll that up and keep it on the outside where I could get at it. And then, yeah, so I have now a desire to use a compass for navigating, and I'm probably going to start printing off these types of maps as opposed to just carrying the Nat Geo maps, which don't have as much detail and also are different in terms of scale, so it can be harder to adjust to. They also provided meals. I know I showed you my food bag earlier, but they provided breakfast and dinner as part of the guided trip service or whatever. So this was a little daily, not a daily thing, but they're all listed here with a color indicator with a sticker on the bag and then some instructions. I am not somebody who usually boils in the pot. I usually do the freezer bag meals, but as part of this trip, a couple of times, definitely not a couple, but several times, I used freezer bags because I had them, but I was using this to cook in the pot. So I'm probably going to start doing that at times now. Let's see here. I have basically, this is my going to the bathroom bag. Inside here, I had some wet ones that I would use a wet one after I was done going number 2. And then in other things in here was Dr. Bronner's and then a hand sanitizer, just a regular size hand sanitizer. This was handy to carry with me with my backcountry bidet, head out there and go to number 2 in the rain and the wind. Steaks, I have in here the big sized MSR groundhogs, and then I had some extra ones because my tent, I have some extra lines as well as the little clippy things. And there are times where when you use the Z packs, the ridge line, you may want or need to have that stake really far out. And if it's really far out, well, you're not going to be able to use the door to get it connected at the right angle. So I have basically an additional line that I can connect to a stake with the little hooky thing on there. And I use that at different spots so I had some extra stakes to be able to do that. Had some 100 proof DEET bends. This I like. I only needed it twice. And I probably didn't really even need it that time. I've always was thinking that gates of the Arctic or in Alaska, the bugs would just be insane. It really wasn't that bad at the time we were there, and so I didn't need it. Didn't need to be putting on bug spray all the time. In addition to the pole that I used with the tent, I also have one of these Z seats. And then here I had an extra wet ones. So I used a full wet ones, and then I had an extra one just in case. And then my trowel. And then, let's see here, kind of getting down to the end here. If there's anything you're curious about, feel free to drop a question or anything you think I forgot. So this was my first aid kit. I have rubber gloves in there, and then a contingent of different Band-Aids and not Neosporin, but triple antibiotic. I have in here ibuprofen, Benadryl, and then my Prilosec, omeprazole, and then some Sudafed, some anti-diarrhea pills that I didn't need. And then also, as part of this trip, I got some Z-Pack from my doctor, just in case I needed it, and I did not need it. I did need some ibuprofen a few times, and then I also did use the Benadryl. I had a collapsible toothbrush that I bought at Safeway because my one that I had sawed off that I use again and again. When I went to Gates Glacier Bay, there was mold on it. So at the lodge there, I got a free toothbrush, but I bought a new travel toothbrush for this. I also have sensitive teeth, so I use Listerine to rinse, and that helps me minimize the sensitivity. Line, I actually used this twice because I had times where I wanted to be able to keep both two of my four doors open, and it was raining coming from a certain direction. And I used the line to um, hold the the tent floor up and keep it from sagging down, while I use the mitten hook things that go down and connect to that to the zipper. So pulling in the screen, the mesh screen, so keeping that kind of more tucked in underneath the tarp. And so while I was doing that with those elastic things, I used that to basically hold up the floor a little bit. I forgot my little toothpick thingies, so I had some floss that I got at the store, and I got a tubic, Luco tape. I, I didn't I don't usually use that, but my feet were wet so often continuously during this trip that I actually pre-taped my heels. And then I also felt one day a hot spot right here. There was a lot of side hilling in some days, so I used that to minimize that and have basically a partial roll that's now almost gone. Yeah, what I've done differently with my gear, if there was anything, I'll answer that because I'm just about to the end here. I had suntan lotion that I put on my face. This was SPF 50 a few times. And then I have some other things like a lighter, a little Swiss Army knife. I've got one of these Opal pen knives that's much better for cutting, the Luco tape, moisturizer, and then I carry Vaseline, and then I have extra lip balm in addition to the one that's in the pack that I have out and available. So in case I lose one, I'm not without lip balm. So that is everything inside of my pack. And what I have done differently, I was cold one day where we were hiking and it had just been raining all day. We were starting each day usually at 6 a.m., which meant that you were expected to have all of your stuff in your bag and your tent broken down, and then meet at the spot where we would make food and eat together at 6 a.m. And that one day, basically at 6 a.m., it was raining. Not significant downpour, but just enough in the wind to be like, it's not good for hiking. If we just get out there now, Andrew was like, yeah, we're going to make it a few hours and we're going to regret this decision. So we stayed in our tents, and then we delayed a second time, and I fell asleep for 3 hours and Andrew needed to like shake my leg to wake me up. So anyways, that day we eventually started hiking out, and it was good for a while, but then the rain picked up and I was wearing shorts, which felt okay at the time, and it was cold on my upper body. So I think one thing that I would probably change or do differently is I would bring a a mid layer, something like a fleece that I could keep just a little bit warmer, that wouldn't necessarily absorb the water, and that would have kept me warmer, and I could have continued on hiking. And so a mid layer, I think definitely in terms of tent, I would have probably have been much happier had I brought the Sling Fin Portal 2. It in terms of drying out and dealing with rain, I feel like once that tent gets wet, it maybe holds on to moisture more than a Dyneema fabric tent that you can just kind of shake off. And it's just, unlike sil nylon, it doesn't really absorb anything. So I would have swapped that out. Let's see here. Other things that I might have changed. I wouldn't have brought the extra pair of underwear or the bucket hat. And then let's see here. I didn't use that stupid compass with the thermometer attached to it that I'm gonna never use again. And I also am now planning to use a trash compactor bag. It's like a 2 mil thickness for inside my pack here, just as a pack liner. Of course, if I'm going to Yosemite or somewhere in the Sierra and there's no chance of rain at all, I probably wouldn't even mess with it. But if there is any chance of rain, I would do that just for the reassurance, knowing that my pack is going to be dry. I think I still have probably a few more years on this pack. Andrew was using a Hyperlight North Rim pack, and even that with no zippers on it, he was using the a trash compactor bag on the inside because he's concerned, and rightfully so. If you look on the inside of these packs, even though this fabric right here is impervious to water, there's other places inside the pack where it's taped, and then that can wear off. So I'm not sure if you can see that, but where my bear canister and has rubbed off, that could actually allow water through. And then there's also other places where it's just taped over where they have to sew through the pack. So that's something where it's a not very heavy thing that you could bring along and just have that reassurance that you're not going to have wet stuff. Everything was in dry bags, so I didn't have any issues with that water that did get through. One other thing that I did not cover that is just a little bit hidden here is I have these little poles that go with my Z packs that hold up the trekking pole cup things on the end. It was kind of neat, or not neat, but just as part of the first few days, Andrew would come around and kind of help people. And I didn't need so much help in terms of setting up my tent, but he would be like, hey, you need to adjust this, or he would redo the stakes. And he was looking at these trekking pole cups that I had holding up, propping up the tent. And he was like, what is this thing? Like, yeah, this weighs almost nothing, and it just gives me way more headroom. So it's basically a carbon fiber pole that collapses down to hold up that trekking pole cup. What was the total weight of my pack when I started with food and water? I forgot to bring my hand scale. My pack did not feel too heavy. I'm not sure what my total weight was, but it might have been probably, if I had to guess, I would say it was somewhere between 30 to 32 pounds. And that's just from my own feeling that when it's hard to lift, not hard to lift up, but when you are lifting it up, when you throw lifting it up, you kind of know when it's over 35 pounds, or the feeling on your body when you're wearing it. It was not above, it was not near 35 pounds or above. And I didn't carry too much water. There was water pretty much all the time. I'm a person who does like a camel, drink like a camel. When I get to water, I guzzle it till I can't guzzle anymore, and then I drain out my water carrying vessel and then hike without water. And then I would only carry water when we were hiking to a dry camp, or if we were going up over a pass and it was like, okay, where's the next water? And it's not until the other side. I would fill this up part way, so like 0.6 liters worth of water would be what I would carry. One time I also used my Nalgene in here, and I knew there wasn't going to be a bear in this certain spot where we were traveling together, and I would put my bear canister thing out there, and I had my tea or hot coffee on there while I was hiking. So I did carry some drinking stuff there at times. Mavic Mini Brat asking, throwing away the tent. No, I'm not planning to throw away the tent just yet. I think it might still have some usefulness in the future as a shelter for when I go with a group and I need somebody else to have a tent. And yeah, it's still in viable, usable condition. It's just that I moved away for it for those reasons. Another thing you may see here on my pack that I've kind of customized just a little bit is this carbon fiber stay that goes across here, comes out. So if you're carrying a lot of weight, I basically have taped that into the holes on the end there. And so that's it. I think I've covered everything and answered all the questions in the chat. I really appreciate all of you for tuning in and watching this. Feel free to drop any additional questions down in the comments area, and I will absolutely get back to you. And yeah, hit that like and subscribe button. It definitely helps me out. And happy trails. Talk to you later. Thanks for watching.